Welcome to Raising Daughters, the podcast that helps parents learn the best ways to support their daughters as they navigate the high levels of stress, anxiety, pressure, and uncertainty so pervasive in our culture today. Dr. Tim Jordan is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician who has specialized in counseling girls for over 30 years and sheds light on the realities of today's young women in all facets of their lives. This is your opportunity to learn how to better support your daughters, making them feel safe, secure, and truly loved in the midst of life's ups and downs. Here is your host, Dr. Tim.
Hey folks, thanks so much for stopping by again for another episode of Raising Daughters. As you know, I try and tackle issues that our daughters are facing these days. I try and give you some awarenesses about what's going on for them, but also talking about ways to support them and you as parents. And so today I'm going to interview an author. And I read her book, which is coming out, I think, was it April 1st?
April 2nd.
April 2nd. So it's not too long from now, just a few weeks from now. And I thought it'd be a great fit for this show because she talks a lot about how to be more productive in your whole life, not just your business life or your work life, but your entire life. So I asked Laura Mae Martin to come on the show. First of all, thank you so much for being on Raising Daughters.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So you're the Executive Productivity Advisor in the Office of the CEO at Google. That's a mouthful and it sounds very important. So
yes.
So you coach Google's executives about managing their time and energy. You have a weekly newsletter that goes out to 50,000 Googlers, if that's the right word. And two things I think people listening to this need to know about you. These are my two favorite things. Number one, you won an international quiz bowl competition in high school for marketing facts. That's number one. Even more important than that is you and your husband are the parents of 3 children under 4 years of age.
Yes, my daughter just recently turned 4, so now we're 3 kids under 5. But at one point, we had 3 under 4. It's wild.
So congratulations for all that, and you wrote a book.
Yes.
By the way, the book is called Uptime. But first of all, just it's somewhat quickly, tell us how you got to where you are, because I have young adults who also listen to this podcast, and they are so freaked out today about I should know what I'm supposed to be doing my whole life. I should have everything down pat and know everything. And so I'd like to ask people, how'd you get to where you are? Because I'm guessing when you were 18, you weren't thinking someday I'm going to work at Google, which probably wasn't even around it. I'm going to work at Google and be coaching people.
Yes, exactly. I like to give that advice to all the young people. You're really, if you think about a GPS, you don't need to know your ultimate destination. You just need to focus on the next turn, making sure that turn is right for you. Because, I was always interested in business and presenting, but after I went to UNC, I took a role in sales and actually took a personality test a couple of years into that role that specifically said, do not do sales. And I was like, well, that makes sense because I love harmony, which you'll probably get from the book. I love when everything's in sync, and sales, you're really rocking the boat all the time. And so, I think from that point on, I just thought, okay, I need to do something a little more in line with my skills. And then, I got into event planning and then I was working on the side on this project, and Google has a cool program that lets you teach people any skill that you want. It could be lock picking. It could be, something related to work or not related to work. And so I started teaching people my email training and time management training. And it kind of, scaled into me working with executives and then being able to make up my own role, which, is working with executives, but also developing this program. So every step has just been like, what's the right next step? What am I ready for next? Not, what's the ultimate goal? What do I want to be when I grow up? I think I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So it's just keep going, and it always works out if you feel good about that next step.
And one of your steps was writing this book. It's called Uptime, A Practical Guide to Personal Productivity and Wellbeing. And it's basically, I guess, how do you live a successful, satisfying, mindful life and to have it all, not have it all, but to keep it all together, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I a lot of people use the word balance and, finding that work-life balance, but I feel like the word balance still has some of that edge to it. Like I'm teetering. And so, the idea of of holistic accomplishment, of feeling good about what you're doing, feeling in control of things, feeling like you're creative and productive, but also that you're well. Because I think in today's day and age, we see a lot of these like extremes where it's like, I'm working myself to the bone. Now I'm quitting my job and starting a farm, or I'm scrolling on social media for 3 hours a night, or I'm deleting the app entirely. And so, it's trying to find that balance of how do I have this consistent, and then, that promotes longevity. And so that's what the book's about.
And after reading your book, one of the things I was struck with was you're asking people to have a lot of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just, I wrote down several things like what makes me happy at work and outside of work. What are my natural rhythms, my peak times for being creative and focused and efficient? When am I most engaged in things? When do I need to take a break? What are my breaks going to be about? What helps me to take the best kind of energizing breaks? When do I do uninterrupted thinking, deepening my social connections? What energizes me? Blah, 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 blah. There's all these questions I think that you raised in the book for people to really step back and say, I need to kind of answer these questions as I focus on my life.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times my coaching sessions, they start out as a little bit of a questionnaire. And I think that it really helps frame the discussion, because I can ask someone, what are your boundaries, or what are your priorities right now? Or, what's the most important thing you're working on? And sometimes it's just like people are so busy that they haven't actually taken the time to ask themselves that. And so that's really is the first step, is just saying, a lot of times people will say, oh, I always do work in the afternoons. And I say, oh, is that when you're most focused? Oh, no, it's because all my meetings are in the morning. Okay, well, that means that afternoon slot is not producing your best work. And so let's think about how we can shift it so that you're aligning yourself with your best times. And so it's really some of those questions, even just asking the questions is the first step. And like you said, being aware.
And I think too, also, I think our culture so overvalues busyness and multitasking and all kinds of things that even young people I work with in middle school, high school, they're so stressed out, and it's like a competition. Who's the busiest? Who's staying up the latest? Who's the most stressed? And I think that's not just high school students, it's also adults in the workforce.
Yeah, an alternate title for the book was going to be busy is not important, which, as you know, is in one of the introductory chapters, because I'm so passionate about that. Even right now, launching a book, it's probably one of the busiest times of my life. I still have time for daily meditation. I still go on a walk. I still work out. I still spend time with my kids. Like, I'm busy, but only to a certain max point, because I really, really value it, downtime, like I talk about in the book. But I think that when I talk to leaders or parents or anyone, I talk about watching your language around that. And so, saying things like, back to back, or how it is always slammed, or even those little things can really get in, especially young people's minds, and they think, oh, does that mean that's the right thing, or does that make you cool? Or so I try to say, when people say, I'm sure you're so busy, I say, no, I'm balanced, or no, I have the perfect amount going on, because I'm real, and at first people are kind of taken aback, because that's not the normal. But I try to spread that new language, and same thing with my kids, I try to use that language. And so I think, it's something we can all work on as far as what we're saying.
How do you coach people to get beyond well, I'd like to do those things, but I don't have enough time? How do you get people beyond that belief system?
Yeah, so a lot of times time management becomes like the buzzword, and it's like, I want time, I need time, and everyone thinks that the goal is just to get more time. But I really shift the discussion into like energy management. And a lot of times what we see is I have 9 to 10:30 blocked on my calendar to do something I really want to do. And I sit down and it's 9:12, and I get that chat from somebody, and then I pick up my phone, there's a text, and I find myself on social media. And now it's 9:45. Then I actually open the document, but I see an email, and now it's 10:02, and now it's 10:10. And I'm like, well, I barely have any time left. What am I going to work on? I'll do something else instead. So like in those situations, there is the time. The time was there. You actually had an hour and a half blocked on your schedule, but we're not super intentional about how we're using that time. And so really making sure that it was the right time of day. Are we actually in the energy to do that? And then making sure that we're distraction free, and you can get all these things done you want to do in half the time. So I think that we can actually get more time by being more efficient with our time, being more focused, and matching up our energy with the time that we do allow for things.
Another piece of the puzzle that you write about in your book, and by the way, we're talking to Laura Martin. She wrote a book called Uptime that's coming out in a few weeks. You also talk about the fact that we don't value downtime enough.
Yes, I think that kind of goes with the busy is important piece. And, when I do a big event and I'm speaking and I say, okay, raise your hand if you think of your best ideas in the shower, most hands. If you think of them on the commute, most hands. When you're just playing with your kids, cooking dinner, walking the dog, that's where I get all the hands. When I say, when you're in your 10th meeting of the day, no hands. When you're knee deep in your email, super stressed, no hands. And so I think that just shows that we really need those times that our brain is a little bit off so that we can soak in all the things that we're doing. So vacations, like truly unplugging on vacations, not checking email, truly unplugging on weekends, really, maybe taking a break from devices, anything we can do to have that downtime for our brain and give it time to process. I mean, I see people in the office walking to the bathroom and they have their phone in their hand. I'm just like, give yourself 10 minutes without the phone, less, give yourself 3 minutes, to have even little bits of downtime make a difference.
And your book, Uptime, also it's not just for people who are working at a big corporation. It's also, there's a lot of, you talk about how you want people to plan their lives. It's also includes, you don't have separate lists for work and home and personal and all. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So as you mentioned at the beginning, I'm a mom of three. I would call myself the CEO of my household. My husband does a lot, but I'm like a lot of the mental load I'm still focused on. So if I have to register for summer camp and I have something due at work and we're going to a birthday party next week and we need a gift for it, all of those things are on my plate. And so it doesn't really help for me to, have a work me and personal me and like constantly switching back and forth because there's only one me, there's only one day, there's only one pie of time. And so what I found successful and the systems that I talk about in the book, from list making to, priority setting, it's really blending those two together. It's realizing that you are only one person and there are trade-offs. And when you have something to do, you need to have it in a way that's captured that you remember to do it. And so I really think that idea of like, oh, this is my work to-do list and this is my personal to-do list. It's like, it's all one list. Like you have to get it all done. And so how can you make it easier on yourself?
And that starts with the start of your day. And you talk about the morning three. Talk to my listeners about that for a minute.
Yeah, so I really feel like there's certain points of control throughout your week and certainly in your day. So really getting control of your morning and making it peaceful and smooth makes a huge, huge difference. That matters much more than maybe the last hour of your day if you're, kind of winding down. So the morning three things that I like to do, and for me and my family, the first one is setting some sort of music. So music is really a background for all of us. It sets a tone, it sets a mood, it evokes emotion. And so if you've ever been to a party that's a little bit awkward, it's probably because the music is not on or it's off and we don't even realize it's going on. So I like to put on instrumental music in the morning. We do instrumental Disney, piano sometimes, anything that kind of sets that background for, I'm going to have a happy moment here. The second piece is the lighting. And a lot of people, wake up, turn on the lights. And it's like, that's not what our bodies are used to. So I have one of those rising alarm clocks. I wake my kids up with natural light. I have dim lighting. And then as the morning goes on, I'm turning on more lights in the kitchen. So just remembering that soft ease into the day. And then the last piece is doing something for your future self, which the book talks a lot about future you. And so, having something set up. So I really love the Montessori principles, and they talk about the idea of, a prepared environment. Kids love a prepared environment. We love a prepared environment. Kids love walking down and seeing that a snack has already been made for them or a toy has been set out. And so you want to do that for yourself. You're a delightfully done, I call it. So whether that's making the lunches the night before, setting out your outfit the night before, setting your coffee on an alarm the night before, one thing so that your morning self says, that's already done, because that's such a good way to start the day. And so doing that for yourself each night, whether it's something different or the same thing every day, really helps set you off on a good day.
So a key word that I heard or read a bunch of times throughout your book was being intentional. And one of the ways you talk in your book about being intentional is about having breaks from technology and having times when everybody's unplugged, if you will. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, so a lot of times people are like, you work for a tech company, what are you talking about? But, I think Google, everyone understands that technology is an important and valuable part of our lives, but there's also digital well-being that you can practice and examine your relationship. So one thing I do at Google that's really popular is the No Tech Tuesday Night Challenge. It actually just wrapped up, and it's thousands of people sign up for just one night a week from dinner time until the following morning to put away devices, including TV. So this is something my husband and I did for a year. Yeah, it scares a lot of people. But we did it for a year as like a New Year's resolution. And I loved it so much that I was like, I'm going to start doing this with a bigger group. So now it's like thousands of people participate. And the best things are the comments I get from parents, because they say, my teenager at first resisted this, but then we did a puzzle and he opened up to me more than he ever has. My kids love when we do this because we're paying attention to them. And I realize they're only on their devices because we're always on ours. My daughter finally, asked me if I wanted to go on a walk in the neighborhood, and it's a night I'll always remember. So, I think those are the ones, just as a parent, that give me goosebumps, because I'm like, wow, these are moments. We're creating moments when we kind of fall into that default, and it's just one night a week. I mean, we're talking about a couple hours, and the amount of people that said that they trickle it into other nights, or they've been doing it now years. It's just a good reminder that we can do a board game, we can talk, we can, do hobbies or things around the house. We don't have to fill every night with technology.
We're talking with Laura Martin, who wrote a book called Uptime, A Practical Guide to Personal Productivity and Wellbeing. When girls come to my weekend retreats and summer camps, when they check in at the check-in table, there's, they have to make sure forms are filled out. But one of the questions we ask is, where's your phone?
Mm-hmm.
And especially for the middle school and high schoolers, they look kind of sheepish. They're like, well, I need my phone for my alarm clock. I need my phone to blah, blah, blah. And we're like, yeah, that's really great. Give it to your mom, give it to your dad. And it literally, there's some shaking that's involved. I'm not kidding. But at the end of the weekend or the end of the week of camp, if I ask a group of 25 high school girls, did you miss your phones? Nobody missed their phone.
Wow.
Because they slowed down. They're out in
Right.
nature. They were actually connecting to people, and we were eating meals and actually talking to people. Nobody whipped out a phone. And then there was 80, all that, and they really enjoyed that. And that, I think, like with your Tuesday, what'd you call it?
No Tech Tuesday.
No Tech Tuesday. Just like with that, when you experience it and you experience the results of it, that probably become, at least for these girls, I encourage them, you need to start incorporating this into your everyday life, because you know how it feels.
Right. And I think that some people get nervous because they're like, I don't want to go a week. And I think the point is that that's a good example of why you can do it in little spurts. So whether it's one night a week, whether it's putting away your phone at 8 o'clock, a couple hours before bedtime, whether it's one day, or never having phones at the dinner table. My dad was super traditional, and he made us have a phone basket in our house. We could put our phone in there, the charger in there. And if we wanted to send a text message, we were allowed to walk down to the back of the laundry room and send it. But if, that was the only thing, we were like, how long are we going to stand in the laundry room? Like, only so long until you're bored. So people had to call our house phone at the time if they wanted to talk. So, I think that I probably was upset about that when I was a teenage girl, but, looking back, I'm glad he did that, because it just taught me how to be more present and set good habits around technology.
You use the expression several times in your book with examples about Swiss cheesing things, to not sometimes looking at like no phones for a month, but you explain that because I really like that concept.
Yeah, so I think it's just the idea of poking holes in things that seem big, so it starts to look like Swiss cheese, and you get down to a thing that feels more manageable. So it could be from anything. If you're trying to, stop using your phone, you say like, don't use it any night, that's stressful. Okay, don't use it one night, that's still stressful. So can I go even smaller hole to, can I put it down for 2 hours one night before bed? That's that. Now my brain gets over the hump of that's hard, and they say that's easy. So, it could be from something like that. Or I want to start meditating. I can't do 10 minutes a day. Can I do 5? Can I do 1? Can I do 30 seconds a day? Like, eventually you're going to get small enough where your brain says, yes, I can do that. And you're way more likely to stick with something like that than trying to do every night without your phone. That's never going to stay. And so as much as you can poke holes to get over that resistance, it keeps you, in a place of doing the things you want or want to stop doing.
You also have a concept in your book you call win then, to try and connect things so that it becomes easier. Give us a couple examples like you used in the book.
Yeah, so I think that when we say, oh, we've been really meaning to do this, it's just kind of one of those things that falls into this big cloud of someday, maybe. And so, it's kind of like matching habits together. So let's say that you want to do daily affirmations with your kids. That's something that I wanted to do. I thought they were awesome. And I was just like, when am I going to do this? The mornings are crazy. We're brushing teeth. Like, I don't really know. Then I was like, you know what? I bet we could do it every day in the car ride. Like, I know that every day I'll be driving my kids to school and I know that I'll have 3 minutes with them then. So I found a fun YouTube video where, it's affirmations for little kids and they say it and we repeat it. And so it's like, because I associated that with the car ride, now it sticks. Whereas I was trying to find somewhere for it to fit in. And so, I even give the example of cutting my kids' nails. I just kept, 3 kids is 60 small
Oh,
nails
God.
to cut. I'm just like, when am I
Little
going to do
nails,
that? Exactly.
tiny nails.
The baby's nails always grow the fastest. But so I finally was like, you know what? We sometimes they're in different baths and showers and stuff, but kind of every Sunday night we do like a bath with the younger kids and we're all in the bathroom. So I actually just tied the nail clippers to that bath. And so they're there every single Sunday. I see them and I know we're all going to be there. We hardly ever miss it. And so it's like an association of when we do that Sunday bath, I cut everybody's nails and I don't have to like worry about it throughout the whole week. So it's any things like that. I give tons of examples in the book, whether you want to do self-care Sunday, just every Sunday night after the kids go to bed, I'm going to do 1 hour of self-care. Might just be painting my nails, might just be taking a bath, but I'm going to try to find that one thing for myself. So, there's lots of ways and examples, but the point is like, if you want to do something, find somewhere to stick it because otherwise it won't happen.
You talk really briefly about, not briefly, tell the example about you wanting to play piano and how you combine that. I really like that.
Yeah, so I have taken piano lessons for years and I just kind of fell away from it because, when you have young kids, sometimes your time gets chipped away. So I was like, okay, I want to play piano, but what does that actually look like? So I said, maybe I'll practice every night. No, too big. Knew I wouldn't stick with that. Swiss cheesed it down to, okay, maybe just one night a week. I'll try to do it. Then I asked myself, what night? That's the when. Have to figure out which night it's going to be. Typically Monday night was a good one because my husband plays basketball and stuff. So I was like, every single Monday after I walk out of my daughter's room, who's the oldest, and I put her to bed, I'm going to walk straight to the piano. I'm not going to pass the dishes. I'm not going to do anything except walk straight to the piano. So the first few weeks I did that and I sat down and played like one song I already knew and I'd move on. And then, then I started being like, oh, maybe I'll start a new piece. And so I would do that. And then sometimes I would kind of get into it and I would play 20 to 30 minutes. And then I started playing longer. And then my husband started knowing like, oh, you're going to go straight to the piano. So I'll, help with the dishes more because you're going to be doing this. So it became habit. And now it's something that I do and I've learned new songs. And so it's just one of those small things again, that I was like, oh, I've really been meaning to, and didn't have anywhere for it to stick. So now it's just that when then association, Monday night, never schedule anything. No, I'm going straight to the piano. And it really worked. So
I saw the high school girl yesterday. I had seen her a few weeks previous, and after I read your book, an example. I think this is an example of this also. She kept saying, "I need to exercise." I know I need to exercise. I know it's good for my mood, but I don't know. I get home, I'm tired. Blah, blah.
mm-hmm.
So she made a commitment to me that every day when she got home from school, that once she got a quick snack, that she would just put her walking shoes on. She wouldn't say, I'm going to walk for 3 hours. I'm just going to put the shoes on. But
Mm-hmm.
the idea was, well, once you have them on, it's like, well, I may as well walk. Now they got my shoes on.
Yes, exactly.
And it helped. It helped her.
Good. That's so great. Yeah, that's a great example of Swiss cheesing because it's like everybody thinks I can put my shoes on. And then once your shoes on, you're like, whatever, I'll just walk 5 minutes and then you're out there. It's beautiful. And you might even go on a run. So that's a great example because if you had just said, I'm gonna run every day this week, it would have never happened. And so you have to find that little piece, that Swiss cheese to get you through it.
We're having a conversation today with author Laura Martin, and her book Uptime: A Practical Guide to Personal Productivity and Wellbeing is coming out in just a few weeks, and I strongly advise all of you to read that. A couple more questions, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Do you have time? Okay.
Yeah.
One of them is, and we talked about this briefly. We talked before we started recording, which was helping people with their emails and how that can be such an energy and time drain.
Yeah, I think that email is just so personal because we're looking at it constantly and, there's important things in there. There's not so important things in there. So on my site, I kind of have a really deep dive into technical how to do that. But one of the pieces of that I like to think about is laundry. And, lots of us with kids know how to do laundry. And we talk about how would you do your laundry if you went in and you opened your dryer and you found one kid's shirt, you folded that, walked it all the way to their room, came back, found a wet pair of pants, said, I don't feel like dealing with this, threw it back in with the dry clothes. You find one sock, you don't know where the other one is, you still put it away, and then you just kind of open your dryer door 20 times a day thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much laundry in there, I'm not getting to it. You just close it at night, start it all over. People are like, oh my gosh, what an inefficient way to do your laundry. And that's exactly how people are doing email, marking things as unread. They already saw, having a bunch of clothes in there that don't fit anymore, emails that you don't need to see. Instead, what you need to think about is kind of getting all the clothes out of the dryer. That's what I call inbox zero. It doesn't mean everything's folded and hung up yet. It just means that I've taken everything out and sorted it. And then I'm touching it twice because I'm saying, okay, I have all the things I need to fold, all the things I need to hang, and my socks. Now, maybe I have to go do something else, but if somebody says, hey, where's that pink shirt? I've touched it once. That email that I need to answer, I've touched it once. It's in the read, respond, or review piles. Those are the laundry baskets I recommend setting up. And so you're kind of wanting to set yourself up for future success because you've seen the email once. What do you need to do with it? But I think the big piece, especially for personal email, is a lot of people just get things they don't need to see. And they'll say, oh, I have 11,000 unread emails. And it's like, well, it's time to go through, search for the word unsubscribe, because that's usually the best way to see what's not directly to you. And then start getting things out of your inbox, because even if you don't open an email, it still takes a piece of your energy. And I talk a lot about that in the book, that you kind of have a finite amount of energy points, and you're wasting so many of those on email subject lines that you truly are never going to open. And so I think that's the first step. If you're only going to do one thing, is just kind of clear out what's actually getting to your inbox so that the things you need to see stick out. And then, if you do email in a work capacity or really high volume, you might want to set up the laundry example to help you manage it.
You have a lot of chapters in your book about sort of how to figure out what's most urgent and what's most important and what's whatever. And in your work life, I guess it's true of the rest of your life also, but especially in the work life, trying to figure out, where am I going to put my time, and prioritizing and all that. And so we don't have time to go into all of that. But one of the things that came to my mind when I was reading all that was, you talk about the need to set boundaries and to say no and to all that. And one of the things I've noticed with girls a lot and young women who I work with is they have a hard time setting boundaries. They have a hard time taking care of themselves. They have a hard time putting other people's needs. They put other people's needs before their own. So I'm wondering how you get people over that hump of it's okay to set boundaries.
Yeah, I was definitely a recovering say yeser, I always say, because, I got feedback about that at work, like, you're saying yes to too much. And it was a skill I had to learn. And that's why in the book, I actually give like literal sentences that you can copy and paste, because I had a hard time, like, what does saying no mean? Like, how can I say no? And so I included that in there. But I think one of the best things that young girls or anyone can do is, let's say you're invited to do something and you're trying to decide, first of all, give yourself a moment, because I think sometimes our gut reaction is like, oh, I should do this. And it's like, no, you really need to let it set in and then decide. And what I like to do is envision if you say yes, and then envision if you say no. For example, I was invited to give a huge talk, and it was going to be on Halloween of this year. And I was really excited. It was an awesome group. And I actually was like, wait a second, I'm going to imagine Halloween day. My kids are getting all dressed up and I'm leaving for the airport. What am I thinking? Or now I'm imagining the day after the conference and I just had Halloween with my kids and I see pictures from the conference. So putting myself in those two places and asking myself, like, which one do I want to be? Which one is more upset or more happy? And what is the right decision? Because I'm envisioning future me and how I'm going to feel. Not, wow, I got this email to this conference, because that's current me and I'm hyped up and excited about the invite. And so I ended up saying no, because after visioning that, I was like, no, leaving my kids on Halloween when they're this young and they're so excited, I'm not going to feel good. And knowing I missed the conference, even though I got Halloween, I'll feel better. And so I used that. And then I was able to say like, no, because, and really letting people in on why, not just no, thank you. That's where you run into trouble and it feels awkward, but hey, no, I have young kids. I'm going to do Halloween with them. Please consider me for next year. And so I think the other piece of that is setting boundaries ahead of time, because I think, that's for incoming requests. But the point is you have to have those boundaries and tell people them up front. And in the book, I talk about positive boundaries. So for example, my family photographer, I wanted to do Saturday family pictures. She sent back an email to me and said, my kids are in school. So I was like, I would love to do weekend pictures. She sent back an email and said, I actually do family photography on Tuesday and Thursday. And let's find a time. And I remember reading that and thinking, I can't believe she just told me no to Saturday and did it in such a way that I thought, oh, okay, let's find a Thursday, a teacher work day. And so, the point is you don't say, I don't take meetings after 5. I don't email on the weekends. It's, I take meetings 8 to 5. I work, Monday, I send emails Monday through Friday. I do social events on Friday. I don't do them on Saturday, but I didn't say that. And so I think that, finding those things for yourself, and boundaries are a long-term thing. You start setting them, you start seeing how much they pay off, you start loving them, you start being passionate about those boundaries. So I think finding just one, again, Swiss cheesing it down to, I'm going to do one thing for myself and I'm going to tell myself to stick to it. And then I'm going to watch as that unfolds. And now it's Saturday and I have no plans and I'm very happy I did that. I'm going to stick to it more often.
We're talking with Laura Martin, the author of a book called Uptime, which is coming out soon. You have time for one more question? Is that okay? One more question?
Yeah.
Since COVID, where people work has gotten more broad, confusing, whatever you want to call it. So some people are working all the time at home. Some of them are hybrid, whatever. And so you talk in your book, it's a really interesting chapter talking about where to do your work and hot spots and not spots, and to try and figure out how can I do my best, most productive work no matter where I'm working.
Yeah, so that's probably one of my favorite chapters. It's, thinking about how our brains actually take in all this information when we're working or when we're doing anything, and we associate the sights, smells, sounds, what we're hearing, everything with that spot and what we're doing. And so that goes from, why was it so easy for me to go in the office and immediately work? And now I'm at home and I'm having a hard time slipping into work. Well, it's because of the commute, the smell of your coffee, the chatter of your cube mates, all of those things kind of primed you to get the job done. So instead, you want to find spots where you can do consistent type of work. So, maybe for you, it's, I always record podcasts at my desk. I always do editing outside on my porch. When I'm in the office, I always do outreach. Finding different spots for different tasks so that your brain starts to say, oh, I'm on the porch. I'm kind of now in editing mode. And so you slip into that more easily. And then on the flip side, you want to find not spots. And so those are spots where you never do active work or think about anything stressful so that it's easy for your brain to relax. So a lot of people, have like a no phone zone in their kid's bedroom or, in the living room or something like that. In the book, I talk about this small corner of our primary bedroom where it's just a chair and my coffee machine, and my kids call it the cozy corner. And I never bring my phone there. There's no clock there. There's no TV there. I never bring my laptop there, because anytime I'm sitting there, I'm just drinking coffee or reading or sitting with my kids. And so it's kind of like a safe haven for my brain. My brain knows, I'm sitting here, I'm relaxed. And so if I brought my laptop there, I would kind of ruin that. I would ruin that not spot, that safe zone. And so you can use those to your advantage to really take, the where of work and the where of activities to the next level.
So I don't want our listeners to get overwhelmed, because there's so much information that we're talking about and lots more in the book. And I don't want you to, listeners, to feel like, oh my God, there's so much, it's too much, and get overloaded once again, or stressed out, because you can take one thing at a time and just start to intentionally, mindfully make some small switches, and then those build, I assume.
Yeah. And I think that, it doesn't even have to be one thing at a time. It could truly just be one thing. I've had executives say like, oh, this one change I made a huge, huge difference. It's just prioritizing the time that I work best. Just meditating, just adding this one thing. And so what I encourage people is, in the book, get out a highlighter. Whatever sticks out to you is probably what you need most. And it's already, your brain is already picking up on what it needs. And so if you don't do a lot of meetings, but you're overwhelmed by email, or you do a lot of activities and you need to set boundaries, but you don't really care about meeting, there's like a lot of different pieces. And so no one person should ever take all the advice of the book. I think it's really about, what is your individual situation, what speaks to you, and how can it work all together. So each of the chapters has little productivity practices. And I always just say, Swiss cheese it down. What's the one chapter that really spoke to you? Start with the first productivity practice, see what a difference it makes, and maybe come back to it if things change in your life later on.
So your book, Uptime, comes out in a few weeks, and then people, I assume, will be able to get it everywhere.
Yes, everywhere.
Okay. And is there any other resources that you can turn people to that of yours, and how would they get a hold of those?
Yeah, so I have my website, Laura Mae with an E, Martin.com. And then I also post a lot of parenting hacks and things that aren't even in the book on Instagram. So the book, has more of a business and parenting focus, but then my Instagram has a lot of just life tips. So
thank you so much for your time and also all the information. It's great. I think everybody who reads that book at any age would get a lot out of it. And there's pieces for all of us, I think, that we aren't oftentimes aware of and not intentional enough about. So thanks so much for reminding us to be intentional.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That was a great discussion. And I really do encourage all of you to get a copy of that book when it comes out in a few weeks. It's called Uptime, A Practical Guide to Personal Productivity and Wellbeing by Laura Mae Martin. I think it'll help you in your work life. It'll help you in your home life, your personal life, and also the balance of all those things. I will be back here in a week, as always, with another brand new podcast. I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate you sending these on to other people to spread the word. I'll be back here in a week. Thank you, as always, for stopping by.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Raising Daughters. Hopefully you've learned something useful about girls and young women and how to help them navigate the pressures, challenges, and opportunities of modern life. If you want to become a more effective parent, keep listening to the show at drtimjordan.com and let the conversations shape you. Build that one-of-a-kind connection with your daughters in the most profound and meaningful ways possible, shaping them into strong, confident women of the future. That's all for now. See you next week for another episode of Raising Daughters.